All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're not seeing things. What a group of people. This is David Zaritsky, slumming it and working for Cue the Music today on his YouTube channel, Nothing of the Kind. What an amazing team we have fostered to put together today. We're going to go around the horn. And of course, we have to start with our host of today's show. Warren, why don't you go first?
Yeah, hello, I'm Warren Ream, Cue the Music, and today is a great opportunity to catch up with the maestro composer of 5 Bond films himself, David Arnold, ahead of what's going to be an amazing year that we're doing a concert, a very, very special concert together. So we're going to be chatting all things Bond music and a little bit about the concert as well.
Amazing. And lowercase p, Paul, from Heavy Spoilers, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Paul from Heavy Spoilers. Just very happy to be here. I don't know how I've managed to worm my way into this, but looking forward to it a lot.
We have Calvin Dyson.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Calvin Dyson from the Calvin Dyson YouTube channel here.
And the target of all of our questions, the irrepressible, the irreversible David Arnold. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very reversible. like a good running top.
Listen, we're gonna kick it off deep and topical because we all have questions, burning questions. Some of these things are going to be brand new discussions, and because of that, we have to start with something that a lot of us have been talking about, very excited about. As of this recording, it has not even debuted, but as of this recording, a few of us on this screen have actually had a sneak peek and played the game at certain events. David, we're going to kick off with 007 First Light. First of all, congratulations on an amazing song and collaboration.
Thank you very much. I haven't played it. I mean, I really haven't played it. I mean, I've seen the cards, I've seen storyboards. I was pitched the story some time ago, quite a long time ago. And the guys who created the game did a kind of walkthrough for me where I went to Eon's offices in Piccadilly and we sat and showed me some, very sort of elementary, early visual ideas and sort of pitched the story and in particular the opening sequence, which I thought was incredibly exciting and great. And I figured well, if this turns out the way it looks like it's going to turn out, it's going to be pretty special. And so that's been percolating with me for quite a while, but you have the advantage of having played it. So I'd love to know what it's like. I mean, I haven't got a games controller thing, whatever they're called. What are they called? This is how old
you sound like it.
Hey, listen, I had one in 1994. And I got burgled and they took it. And I think they probably did me a favor. Otherwise I'd still be playing the thing now. I mean, I've had a few goes on games, but I'm going to have to now buy whatever it is, an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Nintendo or something, in order to ever go on this thing. But it does look pretty spectacular from the bits that I've seen.
The game is amazing. Calvin and I have played it. We had about 3.5 to 4 hours to play the game. So we really got through levels. Calvin, what was your take on the game?
Oh, no, really cinematic is probably the first word that springs to mind, particularly when it came to the opening of the game, which does that classic Bond thing of just kind of throwing you into it. And then seeing how that level kind of rolled into the themes and that title sequence specifically, which was released. So I think most people watching this will have probably seen that. It was just really cool to see how that opening level is complemented by the song when it comes in. It was, really cool, really impressive.
And when I played, David, one of the things I want to give you, call it feedback, call it first impressions, the way that the lyrics now are more meaningful now that I've played the game, because, and I do want to talk about this because I want to get, and we all want to get into your creative process. I think that's what our audience finds interesting. The lyrics themselves are so Bondian to me. When I first heard them, even without the visuals, the first thing I thought about is Bond is constantly playing this game where he has to make a decision. There is no game overs in life, and he has to make a decision. Do you run to that moment where your game can be over permanently, or do you get into a different mindset? There were so many things. I didn't take it as a video game lyrical aspect. I thought about it as the game that we all play in life. What was your thinking? I mean, when you were doing the collaboration around the lyrics?
Well, I mean, it was basically that. And I know when we exchanged emails about this a week or so ago, I think some people possibly hear the idea of like, will you play? And as an invitation to play the video game. But as you said, I figure that that this is about in real life, you do only get the one go at it. If you're playing a video game and someone kills you, you know, in 3 seconds, you have reconstituted yourself and you're where you left off, running towards someone with a axe. I don't know. But anyway, in real life, we all know that doesn't happen. So the fact that Bond as a character is compelled to run towards danger, is compelled to do all these things that we know are like super dangerous, without compunction, you know, without any sense of regard to his own safety to a greater extent. It's the song is kind of asking him if he's sure that that's what he wants to do, because you know the consequences are going to be serious and real. And it felt like when I talked to Lana about, you know, the idea about what the song was about, and you know, I do stress the difference between what something is about and what happens, because they are very different things. There are things that happen in Bond movies that happen across multiple movies. You know, if you talk about the meeting with Q, getting the gadgets, fighting, chasing, running, being caught, escaping, car chases, all the things that we've learned to love. And but that isn't what it's about. And I think with Daniel Craig's Bonds, you know, we've kind of understood that what is about is probably more at the core of what's happening in those films than what happened in those films. And a song has to be the thing that is the delivery system in a way for that sense of what the show is about, what the game is about in this instance, which is in itself just a story in a game format, because there is a story being told, although you as a user are kind of driving it a little more. And so we were thinking about what is it about, and I think that desire, in a way, unreasonable desire to walk towards where danger is at the core of this. And this is sung from the perspective of someone who cares about him and is asking him, are you really sure? Mm-hmm. You know, you only get one go at this. So it's kind of like a warning about himself, which I felt was like as an extension of You Know My Name, which was a song sung by Bond about to his enemies. And that song is, you better get out of my way, because otherwise bad things are going to happen to you. And I think First Light, as it's a nascent Bond, you know, the warning is from someone who cares about him to him, saying, are you sure you really want to do this? Because, you know, I'm just letting you know that it might not work out, which is a brilliant setup.
Yeah.
Because we know that there is jeopardy, there's already danger.
Without giving spoiler alerts, the very first level is about informing Bond of who he is in the rest of the game. There's like these decision trees you have to make. And it is a little bit of a tease in the sense of you have to make a choice as you are Bond. You know, you are projecting yourself in the world of Bond. You have to make those same decisions. So it really hits home.
Yeah, you have to wait. You know, you wake up, it's the first light of day, and you've got to decide if this is your real life, or is this, you know, is it real or is it fake? You don't know. But you're going to have to face that day and that danger, not knowing what you can rely on. And I think these are all very, very Bondian ideas, somehow cloaked in this kind of slight innocence, because I think that certainly the quality of her voice, it kind of enters into a slightly different part of your mind, I think, you know, where it feels somehow sort of quite comforting, but at the same time, there is definitely an eye on the unknown, that we're all wary of. And I am slightly wary of breaking these things down too literally, because, I mean, poetry, symbolism, metaphor, these things work best, I think, when you discover them for yourself. But it's not about playing a game in the literal sense. It's like, I mean, she even says it in the line, you play your life like a game.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. And it's in a way, it's a convenience that it's for a game, but it wouldn't have had to be. I imagine if this was written for a movie, you could use exactly the same. I remember when I was doing Made in Dagenham, there's a song at the end of that. The last song is called Stand Up. And it's about standing up for your rights. But a lot of people thought it was about trying to get people to stand up at the end as a standing ovation, And it's like, well, I could understand why you would think that, but it would be a bit galling, wouldn't it, to have the cast come to the front of the stage and point and go, stand up.
Yeah.
If you didn't feel you wanted to.
Can I ask you a question about writing a Bond song, how it's changed from the last time you did it with You Know My Name? Because it feels like, as a fan, the way that we consume a Bond song has really changed over the time of the series. Because really, the way that we consumed the Bond song for a lot of the early part was we heard it first when we heard it in the context of the film. And I think from Skyfall onwards, it's really become obvious that that's become more of a marketing, and understandably so, because the song gives a really great reach to a whole new audience. But then that kind of makes a lot of people are judging the song out of the context for which it was written. And I know you've always talked extensively about how important it is that the song is written in the context of the film, and you need to, as a songwriter, you need to see and understand how it's going to fit into the film. So I wondered what your opinion is and how you feel about how it now gets consumed by us as fans.
Well, I think there are two separate audiences maybe that you're referring to, Warren. There are the people who really care about the subject, who care about the history, who care about the lineage of it. And then there's the general public who just want to know if it's something that they like or maybe don't like, that would make them want to go and see a movie. And to a greater extent, the power of the Bond song is to reach everyone. And to convince the people who already like it that this is worthwhile coming back to, and maybe to convince people who have never engaged in it before to try, to see this might be the sort of thing that you would like. This person that you like has done it, and you like this song. So it is a great big, I mean, it's a huge, marketing issue, quite understandably, because these are important properties in the world of entertainment and culture, especially for us, I think. So how does that affect how I do it? It doesn't. I mean, when you are looking at a blank piece of paper and you have an idea in your mind about what this character is now doing or what is happening to him or with him, you have to kind of put yourself in the mindset of it being finished almost. And how do I want to feel about it when I come out of the song and into this movie or into this game? How do I want to feel? I kind of start from the perspective. It is interesting because obviously it's been a while since I've done a song for a film. I've been involved and engaged with Bond music pretty much constantly. Whether it's the Amazon show or the concerts or the John's memorial, which was so amazing, although not strictly related and limited to Bond, but with Eon and Barbara and Michael and everyone. It's an ongoing relationship, which is, very dear to me, to be considered as a safe pair of hands for them in terms of delivering things that aren't to do with the films. This is one of those things where they asked me, I think because they wanted to, hopefully, I'm guessing that they wanted to make sure that it was something that was appropriate and that they could be happy with. Because obviously it's, a games company have their own ideas about what they want to do. But I think it adds a level of legitimacy possibly to it. But for me, it was just exciting to be able to write another one. And I remember like sitting down at the piano and thinking, like, how do we do this again? But that's exactly how I felt when I did the first one. How do I do this? And to a certain extent, you have to sort of subsume your frontal thoughts about, you know, all the voices in your head where there's 3 million people saying it should be like this, and do what you think is right for it. And for me, for this one, it was finding those opening 2 chords, which felt sort of slightly unsettled. You know, you get that first big fat G minor sort of, you know, with sort of hints of 7ths and 9ths fluttering away. But then when it kind of slides down to the next chord, you go like, oh, I wasn't really expecting that to be in the middle of that, which makes you feel a bit uneasy. And so I think there was that general sense of sort of warm uneasiness, which felt familiarly Bond to me. And so that's how I started. But I really think you can't, if you start listening to the voices of there are many in the world, you know, who have an interest in this, you would do the worst thing possible, which is try and please everyone. And I think, you know, what's that joke? There's a saying that says you can't please everyone all the time. And last night, all those people were at my show. So,
well, just while we were on the subject of video games, I was curious because you have contributed towards a couple of James Bond video games previously, GoldenEye Reloaded and 007 Legends. So I was just curious, like, you know, how the process of working on those was for you, because it was obviously with a very different team.
Yeah,
first
well,
light.
they were sort of very arm's length in a way, you know. And I think again it was more like a bit of a safety net, possibly. I mean, the great thing about GoldenEye was being able to do that song again with Nicole Scherzinger, who's an amazing singer. But you know, we just wanted to, in a way, recreate the Tina Turner one, so there wasn't really that much for me to do short of redo it. But I think what's interesting, I think there is a big difference between those games and this. And I've only really discovered this, I think, in the last few days of thinking about it and talking to people about it. That I think we started off with the literary Bond, right? And we still have the literary Bond. All those amazing books, still in print, still being reprinted, continuation books. There is a literary world of James Bond, which has for a very long time not really had any real relationship or connection with the cinematic Bond. So the cinematic Bond is the one that most people are familiar with, I'd say, in terms of members of the public. Obviously, it's been going since 1962. It covers a lot of ground in terms of demographics. But they are both very separate worlds, I think, even though they share similarities. And I think those other games, those earlier games, were kind of part of a kind of gaming imagination, reimagining almost of the cinematic Bond. This game feels like this is the start of a gaming Bond world, which will be a similar separate world to the cinematic Bond and to the literary Bond. And I think with this being the first instance of that, I think you can have continuation games of this where this Bond, this person, and the people that are in his world will be just as, I think it already is, as legitimate as the cinematic Bond and the literary Bond. I think this is the third world of this character, and I think it's going to be really interesting what happens with it.
Yeah, I think it's quite a good time to drop it as well, because obviously James Bond died in the last movie, and then we're kind of soft rebooting with the game and kind of keeping Bond in the public consciousness and kind of building hype towards it. It was through Lana's song that you did that I actually discovered she did a song called 24 for Spectre. And I just kind of wondered, like, what the process of getting her back with, and in general, what the process is of coming up with a song for. Obviously, you know, she's a very well-known artist. She has her own signature style. when you come up with a song, do you write in a certain way and then kind of change things for the artist, or is it kind of a symbiotic relationship?
Well, I think it depends on whether the artist you're writing for are writing artists, and whether or not the material that you've got is something which you feel has to be complete in and of itself. Um, when I did Surrender, there was no artist attached or involved. When I did The World Is Not Enough, there wasn't an artist attached or involved. We just wrote the song for the movie as, you know, the best possible version of the song that I had at that time. And then you think, well, who can we cast in this thing? You know, who could be a person who could almost be in the movie, or be of the movie. And I think they were all good decisions that were made. I mean, obviously the most obvious with Casino Royale with Chris was, you know, wanting to find someone who sounded like Daniel looked, you know, who sounded like the guy who ran through a wall, who could be tender and violent, you know, within a split second of each other. What is the voice that can say that? You know, for me, it was always going to be Chris. So the thing with Lana, I knew fairly early on that she'd agreed to do it. So what I didn't want to do is, listen, you don't give line readings to great actors, right? You don't hire someone like Robert De Niro and put them in front of the camera and say this line like this, Robert. You know, like it's like, are you talking to me? Right? Say it. Like, you let him do what he does, right? And that's how you get magic. So I knew Lana is a great writer. I think she has an absolute kind of timeless quality, which I think suits Bond anyway. The fact that I feel like that you could listen to her singing in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and onwards, and it would still be her. You know, be unmistakably her. And I love that about her. In the same way that when John Barry wrote songs, he never wrote songs which were reflective or redolent of the culture in music that was happening at the time. You know, I mean, if you write Diamonds Are Forever at the tail end of the Beatles, you know, We Only Live Twice at sort of Sergeant Pepperish, you know, it just was its own world, and therefore doesn't feel like it dates. And I think Lana is timeless as a singer and very much her own person. What I didn't want to do is get in the way of what she wanted to bring to this thing, because I knew she cared about it. So I would, you know, I sort of exchanged sketch ideas with her, and she would send me sketch ideas that she had. And between that process, we put it together. We weren't in the same room. She was touring for quite a lot of the time, and had an amazing show. It was so theatrical and unlike any sort of stadium show I'd seen, because there was a moment in that show where she was off stage for 6 minutes and you were still absolutely enthralled with what you were looking at. And when she came back, it was even better. You know, it was a really unique performance, I thought. And I knew she was enthusiastic about Bond songs. So in a way, it's an easy ask, because over the years, as you're aware, so many people, including her, have said, how come, you know, we've never had a Bond song from Lana Del Rey? So you know, I was hugely grateful that she took it on, obviously, because it's a great asset to everyone.
Yeah, I think just the song in general, it's one of those Bond songs that you could easily, you know, if you had a time machine, take this song and go back through pretty much every era and drop this song in amongst any kind of film, and it would work. I think it suits all of the actors really well, but it obviously kickstarts this new generation too. I think it's just such a good piece in general. It's clearly got like your stylistic, you know, markings in it, but it's also got, I mean, it
is a different world. It is a different world, and I know that's something that's used in marketing a lot for Bond. You know, it's a different time, it's a different world, but there's still one man, blah blah blah. You know, but I mean, this is, you know, the world of games is something oddly that I know people do it in a sort of communal sense, but you know, when you go to the movies, you are in the room with hundreds of people, and you have a shared experience of it. When you're playing a game, you're largely doing it on your own. And I suppose in a way that harks back to people's experiences with the books. You know, you would be by yourself quietly losing yourself in this world. And then we get the cinematic Bond where you are losing yourself in this world, but holding hands with 800 other people, which is a different sort of experience. And now we're into the gaming Bond world where you can almost become him in a way that you felt like, you know, I mean, look, the demographic of this panel, right? Right. Who didn't want to be Bond when they saw it? You know,
Still do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think David is still trying. Exactly.
Whatever gave you that idea?
You
How dare
know,
you.
you know, so it has its appeal, you know,
Yeah.
to a certain sort of demographic, and I think that will not change. But it's interesting that you can be that person now, you know, in a way that so far you've had to either cosplay it or go to events or something. But now in the game, you can be him, and that's very interesting. And I know that's not unique, and I know that's happened. You know, you've controlled Bond before in games. But this feels like it is the start of something different, and I'm really interested and excited about where this might lead.
I think with it being a new actor as well, in the past it's always been like Pierce Brosnan is the movie star, and here's the games that kind of use his likeness, and Daniel Craig's the movie star. And this is going to be a lot of people's first James Bond experience, because, you know, we're going through a hiatus with the movies, and there's going to be kids who, you know, were maybe quite young when No Time to Die released, and now they're growing up, they're playing games and stuff, and this will be kind of their first experience with their James Bond.
Well, it's great. It's great timing in a way, because there is no cinematic opposition. You know, there is no cinematic competition at the moment. You know, there is still a thirst for Bond stuff, and, you know, the endless speculation about the movies, which has been like this since, you know, 1963, really, since it kind of established itself. Endless speculation about who's it going to be, who's going to be doing the song, who's going to be the Bond girl, you know, what are the gadgets going to be, what's going to happen. You know, that's like the same questions, like every few weeks, speculative, you know, sort of journalism about what it could be, who it might be, and a kind of flood of public response to the suggestions, because like we said before, everyone's got an idea about what it should and shouldn't be. So in a way, it's really interesting the way that this feels like it's almost positioned like a movie would be, because there is nothing else for it to compete with. You know, whatever the next movie is going to be some distance between the game happening and that, and it does feel like oddly kind of competitive in a way, you know, in terms of like, well, who is going to be our Bond, the generation, you know, this generation? Is it going to be, you know, is it going to be the gaming one? Is it going to be the cinematic one? And the fact that we haven't got a face for the next cinematic Bond means that it's still a nebulous idea. You know, I think for me as a writer, not knowing who was James Bond in Casino Royale really helped what I was doing, because I didn't have to consider how a person would perform the role. You know, it was just what was on the page was the start of all that. And then obviously seeing Daniel in the role kind of confirmed a lot of things, actually, but that's just great casting. So with this one, you know, there's I don't know where they are in terms of the production, but you know, this is at its least a great companion piece to a cinematic Bond, and I'm hoping that it would, again, as I said before, like establish an alternate strand, an alternate world, an alternate universe of Bond that is the gaming world, and we know how successful that is as an industry. You know, I mean, I think in this country, gaming generates more money than film and TV and music put together. It's quite a big thing. Yeah.
So, David, everything you said in the last couple of minutes just leaves me a question I wanted to ask you about little hints of the Bond theme in this song, because it's something that you haven't really done so much in the other songs. Really, you know, My Name has a little bit, obviously, of the vamp in there, but this song I wonder if it was because it's such a new thing and with no films and everything else. I wonder if that's why you decided to kind of put those little hints in there. And it's quite clever what you've done, because it's, tell me the Bond theme without really telling me it's the Bond theme, because it's not da 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 da, but rather da 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 da. I just wonder if you want to talk a little bit about that and why it feels so right in this song.
These echoes, I think, of the past are really useful. And for it not to be the same, but for it to be evocative of what's been said before, especially of something so iconic. There is a kind of language in that, I think, which allows you to sort of anchor the character in its history, even though it's a new person. And I think something about when you're setting your stall out for something new, like this game is something new, and the song is having to, in a way, it's the first audio introduction we have to the tone, I suppose, and the spirit of it. I think to anchor it in its own history whilst moving it slightly somewhere different is always a good idea. Little hints and nods at bits and pieces are doing all those things. A, it tells you where you are, but B, it also tells you that, I suppose it's a bit like having a sat nav in the middle of a spooky forest or something. You don't really know how you're going to get out of it, but you've got some guidance as to where you might be. So it's that kind of thinking, really. I suppose it's a feeling of home with the musical center.
It makes sense. I will say we're talking about this song because it's new, it's fresh, it's on everybody's lips and ears. Coming up in November, there's going to be expectations around the song, and I excuse my naivety, but is it going to be played at the Palladium concert?
Well, we haven't talked about it, but I mean, I don't think it's not in the program, is it? There's no reason for it not to be in that regard. I mean, it's in the world, and will have been obviously for quite a long time by then. But yeah, who's going to be Lana Del Rey? It's not me.
I'll do it. I have the voice of an angel
and the body of the devil.
Yeah.
But gentlemen, just real quick too, again, we're talking about the creative process and how things are born out of nothing. How did Warren and David get together? Like, this is going to be some play in the Bond community, but how did this all come about that you're all getting together to do this collaboration in November?
He's got a very long lens.
And he'll use it.
He spent several months in a bush. No, I think we were. There was an event, Warren, if I'm right in thinking that I think was Don Black speaking at it.
No, you
or
were.
Was I?
You were, yeah.
Or was Don there? I can't remember. It was.
No, it was just you. It was the week after the Roger Moore Memorial, and Roger's agent Gareth had invited me to this talk that you were doing, and he plonked me in a seat right next to you for the whole afternoon, which was just a dream come true for me, really. Not for you, but it was for me.
It was like I think it was like a fundraiser thing, wasn't it? I seem to remember it was something charitable. So I was sat next to Warren, and I mean, subsequently knowing what he thinks about music and Bond music, he did very little in the way of being a fan of anything. Like, he was, we talked about some things, but on a very, normal level, thank God. It was like I thought I was a normal person who knows a lot about music rather than a massive Bond fan.
Disguising it.
I don't know how that came across.
So what do you do for a living, Warren?
There was this really awkward moment because I hadn't said anything about Cue the Music. I would never dream of it. And then we're about an hour and a half in, and Gareth, Roger's agent, sat down and said to David, "Oh, Warren does Cue the Music. It's James Bond band." And I'm like, "Oh no!" So that's sort of how the conversation came. Yeah.
But it is interesting in as much that there are a lot of concert bands that do Bond stuff because we know it's really popular. I mean, I think even this week I've seen like James Bond by Candlelight or something. It's like James Bond songs and I've had it asked me before, like, would you do a sort of Bond by candlelight concert? And I said, well, what exactly does that mean? He goes, well, we do it with strings. And what, strings only? He goes, yeah. Well, how many? 2. I said, well, that's not going to work. It might work financially, to only have to pay 2 people, but no, it's it still is extremely popular. But I saw some of the stuff that had been posted about Cue the Music, and the thing that really blew my mind was that they did Backseat Driver, I think, and I thought, I've kind of always avoided that because that seems like too tricky a thing to try and make right. But he'd obviously paid such a huge amount of attention to the detail of it, and I think the sort of very sort of respectful nature of the way that he approaches doing this music is from someone who obviously loves it and respects it through the ages, not just my stuff obviously, but it's a very lovingly crafted charts. It's like the detail is all in the detail, and I think he gets the feel of it, he gets the language of it, and I think when you're a fan of these things, you want them to be right. You want it to be right. I want it to be right in every respect. And I think he's taken on some fairly tricky pieces, which take a lot of thought and a lot of planning, and has managed to get it to work on stage. And so not only do they kind of introduce and reintroduce the world to those songs, but they'll drop in a kind of deep cut from from Honor Majesties that that otherwise people might not otherwise ever have heard. And speaking for on my behalf, I think it's always thrilling when you hear these pieces performed live, by people that care about it. That when it's not a kind of crappy, sort of cheapo takedown, or that'll do kind of arrangement, where the details are all there. To hear that played enthusiastically amongst a bunch of people who love it as much is always exciting. And I think what I'm hoping for the Palladium is that I mean, I was reticent to start off with when he initially asked me, because I honestly thought he was possibly over reaching in terms of the appeal of a night of James Bond music of Just My Stuff would be. I do think that it's a rarefied group of people who are into that sort of thing, and I don't know if there'd be enough of them to fill the Palladium. But anyway, he was undaunted by my doubts, and seemed idiotically confident that he could sell some tickets. But no, it's like, well, okay, well, here we go, let's do it properly, and there's quite a sizable uptick in performers on stage. So it is Cue the Music, but it's also a bunch of quite a large group of additional musicians.
Some really, really great musicians coming from all over London, from LSO and Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra and BBC, like calling in friends and colleagues that I've worked with over 20 years, went to college with back in the day,
And some of them have played on the movies, some of them are session guys who have played on stuff. So, it's a great band. Yeah. It'll be a great band.
It needs to be, David, because everyone always says to me, what's the hardest thing to play and what's the hardest piece to play in James Bond? And my answer has always been anything by David Arnold. And now we're doing everything by David Arnold.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, some of it's all right.
It's amazing, but it's amazing music. But
are we doing Night of the Opera?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not so much of a blow.
No, it's gorgeous.
That's more one for keeping everyone together at the same time. And but we did, anyway. This is boring. We did spread out the alto flute parts so they could breathe.
Nice. Backseat Driver by candlelight is what I want to see next year.
Yeah.
We'll put the candles out, I think.
Yeah.
Throw them out. I mean, did you ever think Backseat Driver would be played live? I mean, that's not something that's ever been done, I don't think, by anybody else, is it?
No, it hasn't. And didn't you say that Alex found you from Propeller Heads?
Yeah, he came
with-
to our show a few years ago. Yeah.
When you did was it on a Majesty's? You did that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a bastard of a thing to do live.
Yeah.
By the way,
It is.
and we're talking a lot about songs, and David, I appreciate you wondering if people would show up, but the amount of chatter in the Bond community and beyond after it was announced on stage when we did that live in front of everyone, the way it kind of shot through the ecosystem was astounding. But now the conversation's changed to, well, I wonder what the set play is going to be. What are the songs they're going to do? Have you and Warren started working on those difficult Sophie's?
Yeah. No, we had we sort of agreed on a set list some time ago, but now the thing that I couldn't say was there's another song.
Yeah, right.
I kind of hinted at it, and luckily Warren is a safe pair of hands. But I did say that there might be something, can't say what, blah blah blah.
Yeah, we have a TBC in the set list for quite a long time, which I kind of the unspoken thing that was like, okay, something's coming, but we don't know what it is. But I kind of figured out what it probably was actually, but obviously keeping that to myself. But yeah, set list is pretty much there, and I think it'll be. And I know David will back me up on this. When you're putting something like this together, it's like we're talking about composing a Bond song. It's sometimes better not to reveal the whole thing because everybody has their own individual ideas about what we should play, and ultimately you have to put your faith in us, David particularly, and me as well, that we know what people will want and we know how to give them a good evening and how to put a set like that together and that it works. And there will be some things that I know I've seen some comments from people saying they want certain things. I think, oh, that's not really going to make it. But then there are loads of things that people have asked for that will make it. But I think the biggest thing you can say with Cue the Music is we'd be mad not to do the stuff that we've done previously. Things like Backseat Driver and what have you. It would be mad not to do that because it's kind of the only place you're going to go and get to see it. And to have the opportunity to do it with David there on stage is just dreams come true, really, for so many of us that love those soundtracks, particularly those David Arnold ones. It's great to be able to do that stuff.
Well, it'll be an interesting group of people, I think, in the audience. I don't know if there has been a gathering of I mean, in terms of the the Venn diagram of do you like James Bond music? Do you like David Arnold James Bond music? Do you like huge orchestras playing it? It's a fairly rare group of people, I think, who would say yes to all of those three things. And like the joke, they'll all be there in November. Yeah. Listen, I would expect if someone cheers when there is a bass flute note playing a certain thing, then I know we've done it right. It's like when that level of like, oh, wait a minute, I know what that bit is.
We're gonna set that up accordingly.
Yeah, no, don't.
Booking a bass flute now. Anyone available for us?
No, actually,
already have.
That was a bad choice. Alto flute.
I mean, David, I have literally booked a bass flute this week. So.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah. We're all good.
Amazing. Okay, because I was just curious. Obviously, you worked with 5 different directors, during your scores, and I was just curious about from your experience, like what, if any, were the sort of different approaches from the different directors? Was some a bit more hands-on or wanted to be more hands-on involved in the process of the score than others? If there were
they're all very interested in it, but I think at the point in the post-production process in a Bond movie that there is so much for them to do. The great thing about being trusted by people is that you are, to a certain extent, left to get on with what you do. And obviously I keep them up to speed with what I'm doing and they hear stuff. But trying to get a director's attention in the middle of the visual effects and the colorization of the movie and the edit and all the other stuff that goes with it, the marketing, I mean, like, it is such a beast to be on top of all of that. I think I think for a director to be able to sort of trust their composer to deliver what they need, and also to be egoless in the redoing of it, should that happen. My thing with any film is to be the person that solves a problem, not creates a problem. So they've all been very different. They've all been extraordinarily busy. It is so tricky trying to get a director's attention on a Bond movie when there's so much else to deal with. These things are usually over the 2-hour mark. You think about the amount of visual effects, practical effects, the state of the cut, the state of the demand of the studios. There's so much, everyone is vying for their attention. So I kind of used to send them stuff maybe once a week. And sometimes they would be able to come up and listen to it with me. And sometimes I would pop down to the cutting room. And sometimes they would say, this is great, no notes. And sometimes it's like, can we change that? Can we tweak that? This could feel a bit more exciting. There's a story beat here, which, we could feel needs a bit more help. And you go through the process doing that. And a lot of the time there is a lot of music in these films. And when you see it for the first time, I know when the first time I saw the African chase in Casino Royale, I think it was running at about 17 minutes. It was absolutely enormous. And obviously that came down as we went through. But I think I spent nearly 3 weeks just on that cue.
Wow.
It was insane. And I think a week and a half of that was just recording percussion. And there was so many different sorts of instruments in that queue. And of course, every time I'd finish it, they'd come back and there's another minute and a half gone. And so, go back and try and readjust. So there's a lot of that sort of work as well. But Roger Spottiswoode in the first one, collaboratively, great. I got on really well with him. I think we got a good result, and he was still, a lot of the time he was still shooting stuff while I was writing. I think they had to do, I think the bike chase, and there were some pickups on the boat. So it's like I'd be working over here and he'd be somewhere in the Far East shooting things. World Is Not Enough with Michael Apted, who's an absolute gentleman who I loved. He was such a lovely man. Knew very well that big action wasn't the sort of thing that he normally does, and he completely trusted his crew to deliver those aspects of it, like Vic Armstrong's second unit stuff on that boat chase on the Thames and those kinds of things. Michael, I've told this story before, but when I showed him the boat chase for the first time, just mocked up in Computer World with samples and everything, so he could get an idea about where I was going with it. This thing was, again, very long. That came down quite a bit as well. But it was a long old queue, and it was a bit of a monster, in every way, action-wise, sound-wise, music-wise. Michael, generally, I think it's true to say, has come from sort of drama and, documentary and drama. And so he was kind of new to it, to this level, I think. And the queue finished, and he turned around and he said, and that's good, is it? And not in a way that was disparaging at all. It was a bit of a shock when I heard it to start off with. But then I realized what he was saying was, if you're telling me that's good, then it's good, because I haven't had the experience of doing this kind of thing before. So if you can, kind of like assure me that this is good, I go, yeah, I think it's all right.
That's my favorite one. That's my favorite piece by you, actually.
I was going to
Yeah.
say,
Go-
same here. I love it.
Yeah, I
But
go run into
me
that
in
quite a lot.
For me in that movie, for me in that movie, I think my favorite is Electra's theme. The recorded version of that. The second part of that theme, that. I love the sound of the strings on that. I remember when we recorded it, it was. I think we had mutes on, but there was something really. It felt really like properly serious as a kind of love thing, because I thought, like, well, we have to sell the idea of Electra winning him over. We have to believe that he falls for her properly. Otherwise, there's, he wouldn't do the things that he did, and he wouldn't want to do the thing that he did at the end if he didn't care. And it also makes that last line even more, sort of tragic but brilliant. You wouldn't shoot me, you'd miss me. It's a great line. But if he didn't care, then it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's interesting. I think there was quite a lot of music that I really liked in The World Is Not Enough, which was embedded in that relationship, which I really, you know, which I really liked. Lee on Die Another Day, there was quite a lot of work in that, which was about being and marking the fact that it was like the 40th anniversary when it was going to come out. So there are lots of visual things in the movie, you know, when Pierce picks up the spiked shoe from Russia with Love and the jetpack from Thunderball. You know, there's these things are sort of very visual callbacks and everything. And so we did a bit of that in the music as well. And Lee was like a ball of energy, you know, and in a way, Martin Campbell was very much the same. I've never seen someone as energetic as that on a set. Martin would be running behind the camera, shouting and pushing everyone, and you know, getting everyone sort of getting the excitement on the set, even, you know, and he's quite a quiet person. You know, the rest of the time he was quite a gentle person, and was just interested in making it work properly. You know, his whole thing was like, his comments were very subtle and very slight in as much that they were directly important, but they weren't overblown, you know, wordy. He would just say something very simple about what it needed, and it was like made absolute sense. And that was generally around the card games, I think, where there's a lot of static things happening. That, you know, it's not cinematically, it's a tricky thing to film, you know, to make that, whatever it is, 18 minutes of playing cards intriguing. You know, how do you make that feel like there's stuff happening? So that was quite a lot of toing and froing with that, trying to get that right. But most of the other stuff, it flew, and it was, you know, and it was fine. And he's an absolute bundle of energy. And Mark on Quantum of Solace was the most different out of all of them. In a way, more of an art director, in terms of art film kind of director. And his thing was wanting to try and do things differently to the way it'd been done before. So he was the first person to ask me if I would write music before he'd shot something based on script. And, you know, the script was a little bit, you know, going between a few different places because of the writer's strike. And I said, well, normally I write because of what I see. You know, it's like you can read something. And I have done this before, where I've read something and I've written something based on what I've read, and then I've seen an actor perform it, and I felt like, well, if I'd have seen that, I would never have written this piece of music like this. So I like to see things. That's why I do this job. And I said, well, rather than do that, when you start shooting, can you send me just little character studies, right? I said, I don't need a scene, but if I'm writing something for, you know, for Green, the whole, you know, bad guy aspect of it is like, I want to see how he looks, and I want to see how he moves and talks. I'm not interested in what he does, but just him as a thing, you know, like, how do we write him as a thing? And that's where that thing came from. The was like watching him move and just look at people, you know, and so I handed that over to him without having seen any of the scenes or anything, and Mark dropped it into a couple of moments in the temp, where it just seemed to stick to the picture really well, and that kind of grew into Night at the Opera. But also a lot of the time when Green was in frame or in the story, you know, then that thing reared its head. And I thought that became very effective. And I don't know if I'd have written that if I'd have seen it. It's what's interesting, you know. It's like it was kind of co-opted and then re-engineered once I saw the picture. But the actual core of it was conceived because I looked at the way this person moved and walked, you know. And in a way, I think if you're writing for a character, you do write for who they are rather than what they do. And I think that's just more interesting.
So I actually watched Casino Royale last night again, and I think one of the most striking things about that is the ending and how you kind of hold off the James Bond theme until it cuts to black. And we've kind of talked about how you sort of weave notes of the Bond theme throughout stuff like First Light. Do you consciously think about when to layer it in and when to take it out? And is it kind of like, oh, well, maybe I'm doing a bit too much here? Or in the case of Casino Royale, is it like we have to leave that until the end? Is there a way that you kind of are consciously thinking about the Bond theme itself while making these other pieces?
Well, I think we have to talk about Casino Royale as a specific entity, because that's the only time that's really happened. I mean, the actual truth of that was that the last, I think, the last 6 words of the script of Casino Royale was, after cut to black, we hear the James Bond theme. So it was kind of in the script as that's when we hear it, because we didn't have an opening title sequence. And from that idea, that's the first time we hear it. Well, of course it's the first time we hear it, because that's the only time that he has become the person that we sort of wanted him to be. And the process of writing You Know My Name, knowing that that was going to happen, because obviously I'd read the script, and I'd read the script not knowing that Daniel was cast at that point, so it's just the story and just the character. Knowing that that was the case, You Know My Name needed to be the progenitor of the James Bond theme in a way. You know, it was meant to be. If you heard one after the other, it should make sense, right? If you hear You Know My Name and then you hear the James Bond theme, like you've never heard them before, then it is like one is kind of like the father of the other, except we're having to do it backwards, because he hasn't become that person yet. But there needs to be the sort of genetic, the DNA of that theme in You Know My Name without it being the same. You know, like the two parents are going to make this thing, this new thing, which is why You Know My Name is like that. So knowing that was the case, it's almost like the film, the score became, amongst other things, a kind of handing over and building of the James Bond theme from elements that could be extruded from You Know My Name, as well as future versions of the James Bond theme. And so, as we've spoken about before, when James Bond in Casino Royale has something kind of iconic happen to him or with him or because of him, then he earns a bit more of the theme. Sony were a little bit worried that we were making a movie about James Bond without the James Bond theme, and that's a legitimate issue. And so that's why I went back to those moments when he plays cards and wins the DB5 in the game of cards. You hear a little bit of it when he gets off the plane first time, straightening his jacket, looks around at this kind of exotic environment. We hear a little bit more when he puts the dinner jacket on for the first time and he sees himself in the mirror, and we see him for the first time in a DJ. And in terms of the cinematic Bond, that's the first time we ever see James Bond in the timeline with a dinner jacket. And so there's a little bit more, but it is within the kind of You Know My Name language, I suppose. And then
David, it's so clever how you did that, but did that cause you more problems doing that? Did that make it more of a headache having to work that in, or was that just something that just happened really easily for you?
No, it felt very symbiotic. You know, it felt like it was the right decision to make, and it felt like musically it made a lot of sense. You know, because I'm not interested in sticking myself at the front of this thing. You know, I am here to attempt to supply the best solution to the questions that are being asked of me by this film. You know, I'm not standing there going, look at me. You know, it does have to be, you know, you do have to be relatively egoless, I think, to make these things work properly. So absolutely, it was the right decision to make. And what is the payoff? There's a huge payoff. You know, when he does have that gun slung over his shoulder at the end, and you're looking up at him, and you know, who are you? My name's Bond, James Bond. Slam cut to black, roar into this version of the theme. Extraordinarily performed, I have to say.
I think
by
it's
that
one of the
or-
best endings to a film ever. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Bond fan. And I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking to you, but it all kind of just works together perfectly to build towards that crescendo.
It does, yeah, but it also works because you're also familiar with that theme, and you know
Yeah.
you've got your
Yeah.
entire lifetimes of experience of listening to it,
Yeah.
which when that moment happens is like, oh,
Yeah.
here we are,
Yeah.
you know, back to where we were when I first heard it. That's what it felt like to me. It's like we're starting again, right? James Bond has returned, right? I've just watched him for 2.5 hours, right? And it's like, but now he's back. That always felt really exciting to me.
Can I
Yeah.
press you for one more bonus question, but I want to set it up right. You and I just a few years ago had a social moment with a third David, and we were not talking as people in the industry. We were talking as Bond fans, and I won't say which film we were talking about, but we were talking about our feelings about a particular Bond film. And I'm wondering, looking back on that conversation, because it wasn't the David Arnold that a lot of us know, it was David Arnold, James Bond fan, that you can look forward to Bond 26, not as a industry professional, but as a Bond fan. And what are the things that get you excited? What are the things that maybe make you a little bit nervous?
Well, I wouldn't want you to think that I didn't always look at these things as a James Bond fan. You know, I mean, that's why I did it.
Yep.
It'd be a bit of a weird thing to take on a movie that you think you're not going to like very much. But if it's something that you've loved, you know, and has been such a big part of your life, musically especially, it is a dream come true. And divorcing myself from the process of being a part of that world, I suppose, that legacy, which I'm lucky enough to still be involved with, I'm as excited as the next person as for the potential for what the next thing could be. Because of course you want it to be your favorite. You know, this is what's my favorite moments in a Bond film: the gun barrel, the very start of the movie, right? Whatever the company's doing it, titles come up and it starts. I'm about to watch what could be the greatest James Bond film ever made. And for some people, that film will be the greatest James Bond film ever made, right? I've seen the one that I think is the greatest James Bond film ever made, my favorite. But I'm not that stupid to think like, well, it could be better. You know, there could be, the next one could be the greatest one ever, and it would usurp You Only Live Twice for me, you know, or On Her Majesty's. You know, it might take the place of that. It might. And I'm willing it to be able to do it. You know, I'm not so locked in a kind of, you know, sort of weird history of it that you can't ever do any better than that. Of course you can. You know, you can always do things that are better or different. It won't stop being my favorite, but you could think like, well, that is undeniably a great movie. And I think Casino Royale achieved a lot of that. There's no reason why Bond 26 shouldn't be the greatest James Bond film ever made. No reason why it shouldn't be, considering the talent that's on it already, and the material and the talent pool and the knowledge that they've already amassed on this thing. There is no reason why it shouldn't be the greatest James Bond film ever.
Yeah. And let me tell you something, my friend. That is the reason, honestly, why 3,000 people in November are very happy to come and see an entirely David Arnold concert, because it is like looking at a reflection of us. I mean, we know in the back of our mind, this is a James Bond fan that has entered into the industry, made good and made a huge impact, but still feels that rush and passion of fandom. You just explained it very well.
Yeah, but also it's also a celebration of everything that's gone before that. And I know we're not performing at that thing, but you know, Warren is an example of that. You know, it's like we love the music. You know, we love the way that those things work for us. You know, the fact that it's held such an enormous part of culture, been such a, you know, a central part of music and film culture in the world, and especially in the UK, I think. People care about it, you know, and they want to look after it, and they want it to be great. They're willing it to be amazing. And I think when you have these moments where you could, like at the Barbican the other week when we did the concert at the Barbican, and like the last 5 pieces were just Bond things. it's like the whole room kind of just lit up a little bit more. There is still a huge amount of enthusiasm for it, even for people who aren't die-hard Bond fans. Like the reason why these concerts sell out so well, whether it's the RPO doing Bond songs or someone else doing Bond songs, people do like them, they love them, and when you hear them performed by great musicians, all of a sudden something that is nostalgic and historic becomes present and with us. And we are there in the moment when it's happening, and a bit like those Mexican stories of the Day of the Dead. If we keep thinking about it and we keep taking care of it, it will stay alive. And that's where we all are, attempting to, every time I step into one of these things, and that's as true of the song with Lana as it is of anything I've ever done, and will be true of what we're doing in November, is to make the best version of it that I can. In order for it not to be a disgrace to the history of the entire thing, but to hopefully, it's like it's lighting another fire under it. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's shining another light on it. It's offering it to people in a slightly different way. And the great thing about it is you can point them towards all the great things that have ever happened before. That's all they're waiting for, people who might not have had anything to do with it, to discover that stuff, and so when we're all 6 feet under, chaps, there'll be another bunch of people sitting in our chairs being as enthusiastic and as in love with this thing as we are, and the thing that's really opened my eyes, has been interesting, is looking at the amount of groups there are around the world who are sort of fan clubs, from like Ireland and all over the country, the world. There are James Bond fan clubs, and they write to me, and they get together socially, and I'm thinking, like, it's such a healthy thing to do, regardless of the subject matter. The fact that people can find something which is a commonality that they can agree on and enjoy and talk about and socialize with, and just be, carbon-based human beings about, that is worth it in itself, whether you like the films or not like the films. I think it doesn't matter. But, they gather around this thing, and I think the kind of heartbeat of it in a way, keep it alive. These are the people that buy the stuff, go to the events, are vocal about what's good and bad and right and wrong about it. The target audience, there's a reason why you get to play the game before other people do. They want to know what the Bond fans think of this thing. They got to get it right. I think they have got it right. But yes, onward to glory.
To glory it is. All right, we'll celebrate this on November 1st at the Palladium. Warren, Calvin, Paul, thanks so much for coming on, speaking to David. And David, of course, thank you for everything you brought before and everything to come. So thank you all.
Hold on, November the 1st?
Right around the corner.
Oh, no, I'm busy that night. I forgot.
I thought you said October 31st.
Yeah, I got my days wrong. Oh, well, it'll be fine without me.
Yeah.
I'm going, don't worry.